They are the laughingstock of professional sports. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the WNBA Players Association. Clap it up for them. Clap it up, clap it up, clap it up. Less than 24 hours, scratch that, less than 16 hours after the details of the Kelsey Plum and Breanna Stewart letter.
Hold up. What if I told you the real chaos inside the WNBA didn't start on the court? It started with one leaked letter that shook the entire league. Because that's exactly what went down on March 19, 2025. This wasn't exaggeration, this was reality. Less than 16 hours after Kelsey Plum and Breanna Stewart's explosive letter hit the media, the WNBA Players Association went into full damage control mode. But here's the wild part. They didn't fire back at the league owners, and they didn't present some bold new proposal. Instead, they released a public statement aimed directly at their own players, almost like they were trying to calm down a locker room that was starting to split apart. The tension inside that union. Yeah, it was real, and it was building fast. And the message they dropped next made the situation even more intense. Check this out.
From the WNBPA Executive Committee. We already know that there's a fracture. We already know that there's division. Let's see here. In every CBA negotiation, the goal of the league and teams is to divide the players. These negotiations are no different. We remain united and focused on delivering a transformational CBA for all members of this union and are committed to negotiating for as long as it takes. Our union's nearly unanimous vote in December to authorize us to call a strike if and when necessary.
That clip right there tells you everything about the tension building behind the scenes. Now let's actually break down what the union said, because the wording here is very deliberate. The WNBA Players Association opened their statement with the classic union playbook, claiming that in every CBA negotiation the league's strategy is to divide the players. Standard rhetoric. Nothing surprising there. But then they pivot to something way more revealing. They point back to the December strike authorization vote and describe it as nearly unanimous. Not unanimous, nearly. And in a situation like this, that one word carries serious weight. Because what it really suggests is that there was already a group of players who weren't fully on board. And now, that minority is starting to get louder. Then the statement brings up a recent player survey that supposedly proves the current league proposal isn't worth accepting. But here's where things start getting really interesting, because the details around that survey raise some major questions. Take a look at this next clip. Fire.
WNBPA survey on league proposal. This is what they're putting out. Would you accept the league's proposal of 50% of net revenue, which is less than 15% of gross revenue, in an 8-year deal, or ask the union to keep negotiating? 84% vote. No. I would not accept 15% and want the union to keep negotiating. Interesting, because the statement was mainly focused on the strike, the potential of a strike, players being in favor of a strike, nearly unanimous vote of a strike. But what they release is interesting.
Look at how they framed that question. Would you accept the league's proposal of 50% of net revenue, which is less than 15% of gross revenue in an 8-year deal, or ask the union to keep negotiating? 84% voted no. 259. But notice what they didn't ask. They didn't ask, would you be willing to strike, miss paychecks, lose fan engagement, and potentially return to the table in a year with less leverage and a worse offer? That's the actual question that matters, because voting to keep negotiating cost you nothing. Voting to strike cost you everything. 317. This is survey design 101. You can get any result you want based on how you phrase the question. And the Players Association chose to ask about rejecting a proposal, not about the consequences of rejection.
Probably wouldn't. Damage control. Folks, they couldn't go 24 hours without feeling the need to respond. Does this not show the lack of impulse control from the Players Association, the executive committee? Fans look at this, and I had newsflash for you. Most of us, we're laughing at you guys. We're not laughing with you. We're laughing at you. Like, you guys are also like the car wreck.
And if you really paid attention to that last clip, you can already feel the tension boiling over inside the league. Because the timing of this statement, that tells you everything about the mindset inside the WNBA Players Association right now. They pushed that statement out less than 16 hours after the letter from Kelsey Plum and Breanna Stewart went public. That's not strategy, that's panic mode. That's a leadership group scrambling to contain the fallout after two of the biggest stars in the entire league just publicly questioned the direction of the union. Now think about how a disciplined union normally reacts when internal dissent hits the spotlight. They don't rush to social media. They don't start firing off press releases. They go quiet. They regroup behind closed doors. Then they come back with a united front through their actions, not their words. But instead, the WNBPA rushed out a statement that basically sounded like, "We're still in control, trust us, most players still agree with us, and please don't listen to Kelsey and Stewie." And here's the brutal reality. The owners weren't the target audience for that message. The commissioner of the WNBA, Kathy Engelbert, didn't read that statement and suddenly panic about giving the players a bigger deal. If anything, the league office probably looked at that situation and thought the exact opposite. Because what that statement really signaled to the owners was this: the union might be fractured, the leadership looks reactive instead of strategic, and internal politics might be starting to overshadow the actual negotiations. And once that perception gets out there, the entire balance of power in negotiations can shift overnight. But the next moment in this story, that's where things get even more explosive. Watch this.
To the players. You're either with us or against us. It's that simple. I never expect anything from the WNBA Players Association, and yet they still manage to disappoint me. The owners don't care about the pressure of a strike. In fact, they're daring the players to strike. If we can see through this BS, the owners can too. As you have stated, fish swimming among sharks. Oh yeah, far in over their head. It's amazing through this process how unself-aware the players union is. They are out of their depth, and whoever is consulting them are incompetent, so unprofessional. They are very self-unaware. And a lot of that blame, sorry, needs to go to the old guard fans, needs to go to the old guard reporters who inflated their ego for the last 30 years, thinking that there's something. Sorry. Ain't really nothing.
And that right there is where things get really complicated for the union. Because the leadership of the WNBA Players Association keeps pointing back to that December strike authorization vote like it's some unbeatable trump card. Nearly unanimous, they say, like that threat alone is supposed to shake the league. But let's slow down and really think about what a strike would actually mean in this moment. The WNBA is coming off the biggest season in its entire history. And a huge reason for that explosion: the arrival of Caitlin Clark. Her rookie year pulled massive audiences, with millions tuning in for the championship stage and arenas across the league suddenly packed night after night. Merchandise sales skyrocketed, media attention exploded, and the league started landing bigger broadcast deals. In other words, this is the moment of maximum momentum for women's basketball. Now imagine hitting the brakes on all of that. Imagine the 2026 season simply not happening. That means Caitlin Clark's sophomore season, the one fans are dying to see, disappears overnight. It means top draft prospect Paige Bueckers finally arrives to the league, but has nowhere to play. It means generational stars like Juju Watkins potentially sitting out what should be career-defining moments. All the hype, all the attention, all the growth the league just built, suddenly frozen. And here's the harsh reality the old guard might be overlooking. Casual fans don't pause their lives for labor disputes. The millions who tuned in because of Caitlin Clark aren't necessarily waiting around through a long standoff. Sports attention moves fast. If the momentum dies, it might not come back the same way. Which means if negotiations drag on and players eventually return to the table a year later, they might be negotiating from a much weaker position than they realize. And the next development in this story? That's where the real power dynamics start getting exposed. Take a look at this. Fire.
Good. Here we have Alicia Clark speaking about the league proposals.
I think it just continues to illustrate what the majority feels. We are at a place where we feel like the proposals the leagues have sent haven't been good ones. And, we want to continue to fight for what we know we deserve. And we hope that at some point the league decides to have that same, sentiment towards us as well through the proposals that they send.
Now, is a strike still on the table for the players?
I mean, when you look at the vote that we took back in December, we didn't take that lightly at all. And it was almost a unanimous vote for yes, that, a strike is on the table. And so as a union, we're going to use every tool that we have in our pocket to be able to fight and get what we know we deserve. So it's very much still on the table. And that is something that I think is clear as we continue to have these conversations with our union.
And after that last moment, the conversation gets even more revealing. Because when you actually listen to how Alicia Clark frames the situation, it says a lot about where the leadership of the WNBA Players Association is right now. She says the proposals the league has sent over haven't been good ones. That's it. And remember, this isn't just any player talking. She's the vice president of the union. But instead of breaking down exactly what's wrong with the offer, instead of laying out a clear counter-proposal, what we get is this vague dissatisfaction. Then she doubles down and confirms that a strike is still very much on the table, calling it a tool we have in our pocket. But that wording right there reveals a huge disconnect. Because in labor negotiations, a strike isn't just some casual tool you pull out whenever you feel like it. A strike is the nuclear option. It's the last move on the board. The thing you threaten only when you have undeniable leverage and absolutely no other path forward. And that's where the problem starts. Because right now, the WNBA players don't necessarily have leverage. What they have is momentum. And those two things are very different. Momentum is fragile. Momentum disappears the second the games stop, the second the arenas go dark, the second the fans move on to the next thing. And the reality is, the league owners understand that dynamic extremely well, maybe even better than the players themselves. Which sets up a very dangerous situation for the union moving forward. Because what happens next could completely shift the balance of power in this entire negotiation. And the next clip explains exactly why. Fire.
Alicia, but hey, respectfully, you're delusional. Oh, shout out to CDS. LOL, players with no motion leading the players, knowing why they haven't been able to move the WNBA or owners. At least get some Asia in there if you don't want these star rookies taking over. 38-year-old adult woman trying to profit off the young ones at the risk of collapsing a league fresh off the hype. This is gross. But are they going to strike or continue with this BS? Because either way, you're going to lose money. Perfectly put. Excuse me. The proposals?
And if you checked out that last clip, you already know the temperature around this situation is rising fast. Because honestly, the reaction from fans might be the most revealing part of this entire story. Scroll through the comments under any discussion about the WNBA Players Association right now, and the message is loud and clear. A lot of the frustration isn't coming from rival sports fans or trolls. It's coming from people who actually watch the WNBA every single night. And when your own core audience starts questioning the strategy, that's when things get serious. Now here's where the debate really shifts. The current proposal reportedly puts about 50% of net revenue on the table for the players. But the union keeps framing it as less than 15% of gross revenue, which makes the deal sound far worse than it actually is. The problem? In professional sports, revenue sharing almost always runs on net revenue, not gross. The National Basketball Association works that way. The National Football League works that way too. Teams don't split money that the league never actually receives. So when you hear numbers like 50% of net revenue in a league that historically hasn't even turned a profit, that's a massive gamble from ownership. It essentially means investors are betting on the future growth of the sport, especially with stars like Caitlin Clark driving unprecedented attention to the league. But the counter-argument from the union is that they want a percentage of gross revenue, which would pay players before the league covers things like travel, arenas, production costs, staff salaries, marketing, the entire infrastructure required to run a professional league. Naturally, that's where negotiations hit a wall. And this is exactly why that earlier letter from Kelsey Plum and Brianna Stewart sparked so much conversation. The letter wasn't necessarily about siding with owners. It was about questioning whether the current strategy could actually backfire on the players themselves. Because if negotiations stall and the season disappears, players aren't just losing leverage, they're losing paychecks, momentum, endorsement opportunities, and valuable career time. And here's the clock everyone is watching. The opt-out deadline for the current agreement is approaching fast. If players pull that trigger without a new deal in place, they're betting the league will panic and raise the offer. But ownership groups, and league leadership under Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, have been through labor battles before. They know patience can be a strategy too. So the real question now isn't just about money. It's about timing, leverage, and whether the players' union can hold together under pressure. Because if internal cracks keep growing, the entire negotiation could shift in ways nobody expected just a few months ago. And now I want to hear from you. If you were a WNBA player right now, would you trust the current strategy? Or would you be pushing for a deal before the momentum fades? Drop your take in the comments. And if you want more real breakdowns of the biggest stories around the WNBA and the future of the league, make sure you subscribe to WNBA Vibe, because this story is far from over. Fire basketball and hoop.